Well, one of the worst aspects of COVID, and yet another reason we need that royal commission into the abuse of power during COVID, is the disgusting way this nation and many of its teachers treated our kids, forced to spend months on end locked up in their own homes, sometimes only allowed out for an hour a day. Parks were closed, they couldn't play. Education put on hold, and moments that should be milestones in any childhood just ground to a halt. Childhood's destroyed. A new report from the Australian National University says, and I quote, "In many ways, Australia's response to the COVID-19 pandemic is a lesson in rendering children invisible and marginalising their concerns and experiences." Well, joining me now is child and adolescent psychologist Clare Rowe. Clare, great to see you again. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Rowan. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. Look, we've spoken before. You were one of the voices that was very clear during the COVID period that all concerned about the damage being done to our kids. So tell us what you made of this report. Is it a vindication, a validation of what you were saying all along? Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And to you too, Rowan. I mean, I know that you've been a loud voice in this as well. I think that was my first feeling when I read that report today, was complete validation for our kids. But unfortunately, it's all kind of too little too late, isn't it? But look, I like the way that it kind of conceptualized and articulated the fact that some of these policy decisions were solely based on the adult population. And I understand some of that reasoning, that's fine. But there was no consideration for children's needs as a separate group in society with very separate and just as important needs. And so, for example, the closure of schools was purely looked at from the point of view of, the loss of the workforce and an economic perspective, rather than the complete fallout of what it was going to do to our children. And so just like you said in that quote there, it did highlight that report, the complete kind of invisible nature, marginalised, ignored pressing needs of our children during that time. And you and I both agree that, the lockdowns in itself is the most single disastrous public policy that's ever been made for our children. And for those that think, oh, well, they missed out on a bit of socialising and their friends, it's very hard as adults to remember the very crucial developmental role that childhood plays. And that is so pervasive on a number of levels. It's not just socializing. It's just not, academics. There are so many skills to be learned in such a crucial, time-sensitive manner. And when you take out 6 months, 12 months of a child's life, the repercussions are for years, and we are mopping that up now.
So, Clare, what are some of the things that parents should be looking out for? I mean, I know there's a vast area to cover, but with everything from mental health to not being able to recognise facial expressions and so on, maybe insecurities and that. What are the things you would be saying to parents? Just keep a little bit of an eye out for here.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I mean, we all kind of accept, I've been saying it for a long time, that this isn't, our mental health pandemic with children. It's not just COVID. COVID was the last straw. And I'm giving a public lecture on this in a week, but COVID was the last straw in 20 years of different shifts in our parenting, the demise of the education system, social media, the rise of identity politics, and then we locked kids down. So it has to be seen in that context. And I think for parents, we need to look out for kids who are not bouncing back into their pre-COVID life. They need to be back joining their sport teams. They need to be back joining their regular activities that they were doing, resuming normal life. Just the amount of screen time that they had in those lockdowns was just, disastrous in itself. So scrolling that right back to pre-pandemic levels, getting them out of the house. And if there's a real reluctance to do that, if they are still stuck in that room in front of the screen, if they're not sleeping, if they're not eating regularly, and all those kind of classic symptoms, then it's time to kind of seek some help. But you're right, we've got kind of, for example, kids on the spectrum who had to deal with 12 months of, inability to try and learn facial expressions.
Exactly.
And, we're still trying to deal with that.
Clare Rowe, always great to chat to you. We'll chat again soon. Keep up the great work. You've done a great job, and you were right. All the warnings you gave us all throughout that period were absolutely spot on. Thanks so much, Clare Rowe.